are here, they may be asked to address items. My practice is to recognize members of the administrative staff of the SAU, even though they are non-voters, to address this body because they often have information to share. If any voter objects to that, please let me know. Members of the Budget Committee are there as well, just past the administrators. They're sitting there today together. This is a deliberative session really run by the school board, but because the budget is the official budget is an item on warrant article, the Budget Committee is here to respond to questions, to provide additional information. Individual members of the Budget Committee may want to address the legislative body as a whole as individuals, and you'll know when they're speaking for the committee, they'll be addressing the body from the table where they're sitting. You'll know when they're addressing you as individual voters because they'll come to the microphone up in front. I know we want to get to the business pretty quickly, but I want to share a few words about moderators' rules because deliberative sessions are a little bit different from regular town meetings. There are several copies of the moderator's rules in the auditorium. I don't think you need to have a copy in your possession, but you're welcome to review those rules. If you ever have questions about them or concerns about them, please let me know. This body can always overrule any of those moderator rules or any of the rulings that I make as a moderator. It's important for me to remind you of that. Deliberative sessions are controlled by state law RSA 40:13. Each and every voter is a legislator, and I think it's really important to approach our work here today as legislators. The law limits a little bit of what we can do at a deliberative session. We can discuss and debate the warrant articles. We can ask for information about the warrant articles. With some limitations that we'll talk about as we go along, we can amend many of the warrant articles, but there are some exceptions to the scope of amendments that can be made in a deliberative session. What we'll do is I'll state that we're in discussion on a warrant article. I'll invite Ms. Nelson, who's the school board chair, to introduce the article to you. In the interest of time, there's going to be a full text copy of the warrant article on the screen in front of us. There are copies of the warrant, the full warrant in the room. So in the interest of time, I will not read the article. If the body disagrees and wants me to read it to you in full, I will read it to you in full. To speak in favor or in opposition of a warrant article, please line up at the microphone in front of us so that everyone in the hall can hear you. Please begin by stating your name and street address so that the recording secretary can get a clear record. I'll recognize people at the microphone. I will also pretty liberally recognize members of the school board, school administrators, and members of the budget committee to respond or to answer questions. And I'm going to give them a little bit more leeway to have floor time because they have important information to share. If you feel that I'm abusing that, again, you can let me know. I think I mentioned about addressing the body as individual citizens. If you're a member of a member of the school board, a member of the budget committee, just line up as an individual. But when you're speaking for your board, you're more than welcome to remain in the place where you're originally seated. To ask for information about a warrant article, please just look at me and say, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to know X. And I'll look to Ms. Nelson or Ms. Small or another or an SAU administrator and ask them if they can respond and then allow them to respond. Please do not engage in crosstalk. It's one of the easiest things to do when we're in a meeting situation. You kind of want to follow up and make your point. You're more than welcome to get an answer to your question, and then if you get the information and say, I have an additional question, you can look to me. If you get the information and want to say, and I disagree with warrant article 6, you can state that, but please don't get into a debate with a back and forth debate with officials that are here. To amend a warrant article, please write your proposed amendment down and then come to the microphone to present it. When I recognize you, you can say, Mr. Moderator, I have an amendment. Give it to me, and I'll read it to the clerk, and then you can present remarks for why you want to amend the article. As I mentioned, there are some limitations on what we can amend, how we amend things. I'll try to be helpful to voters who want to present amendments so that you don't feel that that I'm manipulating technical legal rules to prevent you from getting your request before this body. But I just need to remind you that we all are subject to these state laws. I'll only accept amendments to the second degree. Don't worry what that means. I've never seen it. I've seen us get there once or twice in 40 years. When I find that debate is over, I'll declare that the warrant article will be placed on the ballot, on the official ballot for March, either as published or as amended, and then we'll move on to the next article. Gone on plenty long. I hope you enjoyed today's meeting. I hope you feel that it's a good use of your time. I really appreciate the voters who have shown up and the school officials and school administrators and public officials who have shown up for today's meeting. With that, we're ready to go. Articles 1 through 4, there is no discussion to be had. The nominations for the various offices are closed by state statute, and those articles will appear on the ballot at town elections printed in the warrant. Warrant Article 5 is the school budget. Ms. Nelson for the school committee will introduce and provide a brief overview.
Good morning. I guess it's best if I step to the podium so I can also see. No, shut that off. Where the top is. Hello? Is it on? I don't know what I've done. Apparently I've, can everyone hear me?
You might see me.
Yeah. There you go. I think I'd give it a shot. Because it's cold here. All right, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. So the operating budget is the first warrant article that we'll be discussing this evening, this morning, whatever it is. I can't even tell what time it is. Some of the, this is not going to work, I can't. Can't see. Everyone can hear me? All right. So just a very quick overview of some of the items in the operating budget, and then we'll open this up to questions from you. So overview and we've broken it out as RGS, which is the school we're sitting in, and then pretty much everything else. Marshwood Middle School, Marshwood High School. The high school also includes Somersworth High School students as we go forward. So anyway, here at Rollinsford Grade School, there have been health and dental increases in the current budget. We are continuing with our 5-year technology plan, so that's been planned. I think we're in our 3rd year now of it, maybe our 4th year, but we're moving forward, getting the technology to where it needs to be for all of our students. We have a 2% proposed increase for all non-union employees, and there have been special education increases. At Marshwood Middle School, there's a slight decrease in the budget, which you can see in the budget. The actual numbers of students attending has decreased slightly. And we also have included 2 contingency students because, as some of you remember, our first year there, we had 15 students we had not accounted for attend Marshwood. So we'd like to make sure we have a little bit of room in there for students that we aren't counting yet. In the high school, there's a bit of an increase for the actual number of students that have attending has increased. And the budget year we're talking about is, of course, next school year, and it will be the first year that all of our 7 through 12 students are attending Marshwood schools. The SAU assessment has gone up this year. Now that's the money that we pay for the wonderful support we get from our central office staff. We pay, as Rollinsford, we pay about 15% of the SAU operating costs. That's our business administrator, our superintendent, I always call her the special ed director. That is not her title, but the wonderful person who covers all of our special ed students, K through 12. Not just Rollinsford Grade School, but they also, one of the things the SAU staff has to do is oversee all of our students. Even our students who attend school in Maine, they must be overseen by a New Hampshire superintendent. So they do all that work. This year, and some of you may have noticed this in the papers, Somersworth had a shortfall in their budgeted amount, and they came to the SAU board. We're all a part of the SAU board, as is Somersworth, and they asked that we use SAU fund balance to help them meet their shortfall. We did that, and in so doing, we received a little bit of money back. We received 15% of what was approved back to us, and they received their 85% to help meet their shortfall. But because of that, we didn't have fund balance in the SAU budget, and the SAU fund balance, it's not in the budget, it's in the fund balance, that is usually used to offset the costs that each school district pays. So that assessment went up this year by about $25,000. Normally, some of that would have been offset, but this year it was not. This year, we are also proposing, I call it right-sizing our custodial staff. A couple of years ago, we trimmed down the custodial staff and tried to figure out how to make it all work. And they do, they make it work. They work very hard, they work very long hours, but some things are two-people jobs, and sometimes we need two people here to do the work. So right now we're trying to right-size it. It's an ongoing process how to do that. So what we're proposing this year is adding one part-time custodial staff 8 hours a week during the school year, and a proposed additional part-time custodian 20 hours a week during the summer. So it's a pretty reasonable way to try to figure out how to right-size that staff. And they have also had health and dental increases there. So it's an ongoing process there. I'd like to point out that with the utilities, because of our sort of crack maintenance staff, they really keep an eye on utilities, especially electrical savings, and we have saved money. Our utility costs have gone down in this school over the last couple of years, and that is really due to the entire staff keeping an outlook on things, but the custodial staff keeping a real sharp eye on what's going on here. So one of the things that comes up sometimes is when you look at the budget, it looks like we've had sort of a large decrease in our maintenance budget, and that's because of the way warrant articles from last year are sort of accounted for in last year's budget as compared to this year's budget. We can talk more about that as we go forward. The biggest ticket, as you look through there, you'll see a few things listed that are not on warrant articles. The biggest ticket item is the need to replace the bell and phone system within the school. This one is old. It is less than reliable, and it does need to be replaced. It was also mentioned, for those of you who've been around for a few years, in the IBEA study that was done 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now. It was mentioned then that it needed to be replaced. So we're certainly looking at doing that this year. And we're hoping to do it out of this year's budget. We also intend out of this year's budget to address safe and secure doors, all the doors around to be locked properly, to be unlocked properly, all those things. And we are also plan to be addressing out of this year's budget, not the budget that we're voting on this year, but for next year, but this year's budget, cupola repair. So we can finally be proud of the cupola that sits on top of our building. So the actual budget, and again, I've broken it out into 3 pieces because I think it's important to see it this way. The RGS budget, you can see there at the top. SAU transportation and school board expenses, because you have those expenses whether or not we have RGS. It's sort of the next line. It's about $500,000 for all of that. And then the Marshwood Somersworth portion of the budget for a total of the operating costs of $5,657,232. We do have anticipated revenue coming in that will offset. It gets confusing because revenue, you can try to count revenue before it comes in, but you really can't. we do have, the state has promised us a certain amount of money, but the state is not always able to live up to its obligations. So we are expecting money from the state. We are expecting unanticipated money from the state, and that is from the Keno kindergarten bill that passed a while ago. And the state has let us know that we are eligible for it and that we will be receiving it, but they are not yet able to tell us how much we will receive from that. So revenues are really pretty much an unknown at this point. But there will be offsetting revenue to this budget. I think everyone's aware that by law, we have to raise the full amount of the budget. It doesn't mean that you will be taxed the full amount of the budget. Any offsetting revenue will be used first before the tax rate is set. So some of the accomplishments that have happened in the last year, with community support, we completed three-phase power. I think everybody, that should be a hip hip hooray for all of us, the community and certainly the school. It was a 3-year project and it is completed. We have abated all known asbestos, and everyone can groan because I think we've said that 2 years in a row. And I know that this year, when we were replacing some windows in the annex, we actually found some more asbestos. There are things that you just never know where it is in this building, but we continue to say that we've abated all known asbestos. And we've also replaced the mandated ADA compliant lifts. That was completed this last summer. And then with operational budget savings, we've accomplished, we've installed lighting, upgraded plumbing, upgraded ceiling tiles, upgraded parking and playground areas, stepped up in-house maintenance of the building, stepped up efficiency of the boilers, and replaced sheds. And this budget allows us to continue doing that, especially with the proposed additional custodians, the hours that they're going to be adding. And that brings us to the conclusion. We will now open this up to discussion.
Any discussion on Board Article 5?
I'm St. Hilaire, 14 Turgeon Lane. So I have a question about the number you just showed on your PowerPoint for the RGS budget of $2,793,635. In the proposed budget for the RGS total operating budget proposed, you have $3,152,881. A difference of $359,246. Can you tell me why that's different?
Question through the moderator to Ms. Nelson.
Yes, absolutely. The 300 that you're referring to is now in the SAU Transportation School Board number.
But that's part of the operating budget.
It's all of that is part of the operating budget. The total does not change. 5,657,232 does not change. What I did for the what you're looking at is the RGS budget.
Correct.
In the RGS budget is included SAU, all SAU costs, even though it's not RGS who paid it. It's not just our K through 6 students we pay them for. We pay them for K through 12. Transportation, all transportation. I take that back. We've broken out a portion of transportation. So not all the transportation is included in the RGS budget, only a portion of it, which makes it a little difficult to look at. And the school board, which again oversees all students K through 12, not just K through 6. So that's the difference. The difference, the 300 whatever you're talking about is transportation to middle school and high school, and it is SAU costs and school board.
Okay. So the $3,152,000 operating budget for the grade school includes transportation and SAU costs.
And school board, yes.
Yes, okay. So it's not really half. It's, if you were to split that out between all of the schools.
So if you have a question, Ms. St. Hilaire, go ahead and address it to me. If you want to make a statement to the warrant article, you may.
Just clarify that. So just in looking at the budget, as I understand it, the increase for the budget this year for operating costs for all of the schools is about 102,000, is that correct?
Question to the chair?
Well, it's an interesting question. If you look in the budget that you have in front of you, you will see that it comes out to be a savings. But we understand that budgeting is complex and that some of these things we have to look at more closely as we go forward. But if we base it on the budget you see in front of you, you will see all the way down the line, RGS, and then at the very, very end, when they're all brought together, a savings in the budget. So I really can't answer that. I mean, I think I understand the question you're asking, but if I go by the budget that we're all looking at, we see a savings in there. Now, so I guess I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
So just follow up.
Go ahead.
So I took out the capital items, the warrant articles for the lift and the electrical for base power, and just in operating costs, it appears that $102,000 is the increase from last year, and that almost $85,000 of that is for the grade school, and 17,000 or so of that is for the middle school and high school. Just looking for clarification on that.
So the question is requesting clarification of what?
In fact, the operating costs are increased by $102,000, 85 of which goes towards the grade school, 17 of it goes towards the middle school and high school.
Okay. Question to the moderator, to Ms. Nelson.
Yeah, I do appreciate the question. Budgeting is obviously complex, and when you have a $5.5 million budget, it's more complex. I think that the board has been working for the last number of years to understand more about the budget, how the budget is done, how it works. One of the things we can do better is to figure out how best to present it, to make sure that we're being very, that we're really comparing apples to apples rather than warrants, but to say that it's increased is I can't really say it's increased. There's no magic to the budgeting. We have a number of layers of people who spend their professional jobs, their professional lives doing this budget. This budget indicates that we have a savings. This is the way it has been done for years. Is there a better way to show some of that? Very possibly, and we are going to work this coming year to work on that. But what we see here is not what we end up paying as a town, and that's the most important thing to remember. Or it's an important thing to remember. We have no idea what the revenues will be yet. Again, I don't think I can clarify any more except that we are presenting what we have seen here. We understand the complexities of it, and sometimes it looks like maybe we're talking about fruit, it's not apples to apples or oranges to oranges, and there may be a better way to present it. But that's about all I can say. Thank you for your question.
Just follow to that. So basically, we can't really rely on those numbers.
So let's treat that as a comment on the warrant. If you have a question, go ahead and state the question. If you've got a comment, if you believe that the warrant article is not fairly presented, just make that statement.
Last question is, can you confirm that the majority of the increase for the middle school and the high school was in special ed tuition cost to private schools?
I can confirm that. It says so right in the budget, and I can confirm that. Yes, and I would like to point out that that this warrant article was approved by both the budget committee and the school board. So, and thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on warrant article 5?
Good morning, Suzanne Hewitt, 9 Woodard Lane, and also Chair of the Select Board, and I have some information that perhaps is helpful to try to clarify numbers that are real versus numbers that may or may not be difficult to understand. And so the town actually is the entity that pays, through taxation for school expenses. And to clarify that in fact, or confirm that in fact the school has reduced their expenses, in December of 2017, we had a manifest in the school district that reduced the monthly outlay that the town pays on behalf of the school by roughly $17,000. That's a month. So that's an annual decrease in what the town has paid for its school expenses of $120,000 per year. That happened in December, so for the December through the next 12 months, there's an actual decrease in what the town is paying because of money that the school had saved from the close of the 2016, forget the year, I get confused with school years, fiscal years. But, so we're paying $120,000 less per year on behalf of the school district.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. Mr. Leach, if you'd like to address the body, go ahead and step right up to the mic.
Can I make a motion that we accept the article as read?
I'm going to make sure that there isn't more debate in a deliberative session, but I'll treat that as an expression of concern that we move along. It looks like debate or discussion on Article 5 is at a conclusion. The warrant article will be placed on the ballot. Article 6 relates to approving cost items related to the collective or included in the collective bargaining agreement between the Rollinsford School Board and the Rollinsford Education Association, which relate to increases in salaries and benefits and decreases in health insurance premiums. Ms. Nelson from the school committee will introduce the article.
Thank you. There's the, it didn't all fit on one page in the, but so the first page and the second page continue. Again, again, both the budget committee and the school board recommend this article. So I'll give you a little background on this. Some of the highlights on the collective bargaining agreement. We are placing all teachers on the correct experience level. In education speak, that's called a step. So all teachers will be placed on their individual experience level where they belong. All paraprofessionals will receive a 50-cent an hour increase. In exchange for this, in essence, because that's what negotiations is about, a little give and take, the union has agreed to change to a lower cost health plan. We are moving from an HMO to a consumer-driven health plan if this passes. In the next slide, and there's a handout of the next slide as well, it will show you the projected savings if the town votes to move to this plan, the savings the town can enjoy over the next, well, I believe it goes out 5 years anyway, the one that's handed out. So in the first year, we can see back here, in the first year, we save $47,700, and let's see, I think there's a little thing here that makes this, I don't know, anyway, sort of the less health savings, 47763. That's our first year's savings. Our second year's, by the second year, if we do change health plans, we will save $98,000 as compared to our current health plan. And by the fifth year, it's up to $250,000 that we have saved if we change health plans compared to our current. And the other item is that teachers with 8 or more years of experience will receive a $1,000 increase, and that is to help defray the out-of-pocket expenses of moving to the new health plan. Let's see. So we go to the next. This is what there's a handout out back. I don't know if you have it with you, but this just shows the comparison is between the current health plan, the proposed health plan, assuming a 5% increase in healthcare costs, and we see that we have these kinds of savings. They are significant savings. The first year, the 47,763, the second year, 97, almost 98, third year, 150. That's cumulative savings compared to the current health plan that we are on. I will entertain questions, but I would like to just state once again that we have not had a collective bargaining agreement passed in this town for 6 of the last 9 years. That means that we have a number of teachers who are as many as 6 years not paid for their experience, 6 years. So we think the board felt very strongly this year that it was time to address that inequity and to move forward with that. We have 6 teachers who are affected, and for a total of 20 years of experience that has not been paid. 20 years. Think of that for a minute. So anyway, we think that this is a good deal for everyone. The town has, looking forward, long-term savings that we can see with the health plan, and we address the inequities in salary. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. This meeting can discuss and debate the article relating to cost items in the collective bargaining agreement. We've received legal advice from the school board's counsel indicating that under state law, this article cannot be amended. So with that, I open the floor for discussion.
June Gallup, 535 Prospect Street. I'm just a little concerned about the healthcare cost. Do you guys have a guarantee that this healthcare provider that you're going with is going to be here in the next 10 years?
So question to the moderator, to Ms. Nelson.
It's an excellent question. I wonder if any of us have guarantees on our healthcare providers, but this is school care. It is, I don't know if we want to get if anyone else wants to speak to it, but this is the provider of healthcare to school districts in the state of New Hampshire. And by state law, they have to, the state has to provide a certain I'm sorry, your mother, do you want to
I was
ask?
just going to say, it's the same company we have now, it's just a different plan with that company. So we're not switching companies.
Okay.
If that, yeah, that was, if that,
That does answer my
does that help?
Sort of. Question. I'm just concerned because even when you change healthcare, even if you go from an HMO to a consumer-driven plan, that with the increased longevity of our staff, the mod changes. So are they going to increase our rates based on the gender and or longevity of our staff, like most other companies do? You end up paying more for health insurance.
So obviously, I'm sorry,
I'm sorry.
You anticipated me, but it's treated as a question through the moderator to Ms. Nelson.
Thank you. So none of us can predict the future. But
you're trying to.
all we can do is project based on what we know today. And today, assuming a 5% increase, and our increases in the past 5 years have been as high as 17% one year and as low as 2% another year.